everybody. I am Marina and I'm your host at UNBOSSED. UNBOSSED is a podcast I've created to highlight women with amazing paths of success here in Chicago. Last year, I set out to interview the only 40 female CTOs in the city, and this year I've expanded to female CEOs and women in politics and government in Chicago. I'm excited to share these interviews with you, and I hope you contact me at www.unbossed.io or email me at marina@unbossed.io. Hope to see you soon.
Jenny Farver is a Chicago-based technology leader and is a co-CEO of software consultancy 8 Light. Previous roles have included CTO at Lightstream company Lightstream, CTO of advertising creative platform PopularPays, and VP of engineering at Civis Analytics. Jenny spent several years as an adjunct faculty member at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management and regularly speaks on technology leadership. She holds a master's and PhD from MIT and an undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley. In 2019 and 2020, she was listed on Crain's Tech 50 list of leaders in the Chicago tech community. Welcome, Jenny.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much for joining my podcast. Jenny, thank you for being here today. How are you doing?
Good. I see you have a cup of tea too.
Oh, yes. Tea. Lady Grey is my favorite. What's yours?
This one is a vanilla, which I really enjoy. I'm into adagio teas these days. They do really nice stuff.
Oh, is that the triangle ones? Or is that the ones that come in the triangle? What are those?
Oh, they do make those, yeah. I do the loose leaf, but I think they do make those, yeah.
Oh, fancy loose leaf tea. Okay, got it. Do you measure the time? Have you ever met people that while in the office, a long time, what it feels like a long time ago, there were people that actually had thermometers and measure the temperature of other tea? Are you that aficionado of tea?
No, and I'm kind of a tea noob, so I'm just starting to get into it and realizing that I have a lot to learn. But pretty much I'm a boil the water, and I have a new little steeper that I like. So, but I'm starting to think about storage. So, very early in my tea journey.
Oh, nice. What did you do before tea?
I still do coffee, but I think the tea helps me get downstairs and move around a little bit more.
Yeah. Totally, that makes sense. I enjoy both as well. I limit myself to 1 cup of coffee a day, and then the rest of the day I vary among tea, and I think it works with the caffeine level and the jitters.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too. Yeah.
Oh, nice, perfect, awesome. So super excited to be here. I would like us to start with telling our audience how did we meet. That's the story of and then I'll tell you something that you don't know, but I think you'll find kind of inspiring, maybe, I don't know, but and I'll tell you this first. I remember that while we were working, you spoke at a conference, or when we started meeting, and we can tell the audience about this, you spoke at an event or something, and your kids came, and I don't know how often this happens, but we were at 1871, and then you were moderating a panel, and then your kids came, your 2 girls came, and I don't know if you have more kids. But I remember thinking, I'm like, oh my God, this woman, she's so cool. She's like doing all these things. She's moderating this panel, and her kids are here. And I'm like, I definitely want to have more kids, and I want to be able to bring my kids wherever I come to. What was that about?
Well, so it's lovely that it seemed cool and under control. The truth is, like, somewhere in between. I asked our nanny to bring the kids up downtown to meet me at the end of this panel, and she had trouble circling for parking, and one of the event organizers did the very nice thing of going down and getting the kids out of the car and bringing them upstairs. and actually, it's kind of unusual for me to blend my life that way, but the precipitating event was that night there was a Star Wars sneak preview for one of the movies, and I had gotten tickets somehow, and so the kids were dressed up and in costume, and I was trying to kind of figure out, how do I dress for being on a panel and also kind of be in Star Wars gear. So I was really I'll just say badass leggings. Yeah. So, behind the scenes, there was plenty of chaos and confusion and Star Wars.
I love this story because, it's like from the outside, perspective, it didn't seem that there was any chaos at all. But I still thought it was like, like blending and just being a mom and being, a professional, it totally makes sense for me and it works and I want that. But I remember that vividly about you, and then we started working together, and I think you can tell this story better than I can.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like, I think for all women leaders in technology, for good reasons, we're asked to participate and increase representation in a lot of professional activities, whether it's mentorship or advising startups and all these things. And but of course, it can be a lot, and we're balancing our lives just like you were talking about. And so I remember thinking, how do I do the things I want to do, the things that I feel most effective, like are the most effective contributions of my time, and how do I bring a little bit more discipline to what I say yes to, and what I like, and like do the things I want to do well and to a standard that I'm proud of. And one of the conclusions I came to was that I was really getting, I was starting to be like a manager of managers, and I was starting to get really not very helpful in mentoring early career technologists. Like, I didn't write code at my job anymore, and it wasn't what I was being judged on, so I didn't feel like I had great advice for people in that place in their career. And so I wanted to focus my mentorship. I wanted to do mentorship for women in tech, but I wanted to focus it at the level of women starting to step into leadership roles, possibly going from kind of that tech lead level to the big leagues. And I think that is a jump at which some of the social cues and behavioral norms becomes like super important and are hard for male mentors to talk about. And so that's where I wanted to focus. And so like somehow, I actually don't remember how you and I got connected, but I think I was talking to people in my network about starting something, and somebody said, "Oh, Marina is also, doing something related." And I remember you had so much energy at our first conversation, and you wanted to do an event, and I just remember being like, "Oh no, I will not organize an event. Like, Marina, this is a really bad idea. Like, how do we solve the problem with as few logistics as possible?" And then, you and I, we realized that at the time it was ITA. They had the resources to, financial and also just organizational people who do, events and programmings for a living to put together something that would be useful. And so you and I did the really smart managers thing where we came to some meetings and we gave great advice, and other people did some really hard work to bring a program to life that we were really proud of. So that's the story as I remember it.
It is exactly how I felt. I actually learned a lot from the fact that you said no to doing it ourselves. Like, obviously, I am the type of person that feels passionate about a lot of things, and then I take them on, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to actually have the time to do this? But since then, I've actually been saying yes, but not me to a lot of things, which has been like phenomenal and a great learning experience. The program now is Women Accelerator, that is sponsored by ITA previously, and now 1871 is doing this program. And the cohorts, I think they're on the third or fourth cohort of women that are now going through this program. And not to do too much advertising, but also to do it because it's a great program. There's a lot of successes that have come out of it, and I can definitely leave the link for anybody who's listening and want to look into this. And then we were able to actually design the curriculum for this program during our meetings, which is I think it was a great experience to figure out like who are we targeting and why. And a lot of the things that we talked about at the time was how do we keep a bench full? Do you remember that? And where do we see the gap? Mm-hmm. At the time, it felt like there were a lot of entry-level women coming into tech, and then not enough stayed in tech and moved onto more leadership roles, like you mentioned. And so I think today we're going to talk about how do we keep more women in tech, and how does that work out? How does it feel nowadays? We started this program like over a year ago. So like, do you see any changes?
I agree that I don't know whether this is backed by data or not, but it felt like about 2 years ago was the real like zenith of dev boot camps and other things that were creating more pathways into tech, and really debugging this myth that you have to be a hobby coder since you were 13 to enter this field, and those pathways were creating kind of the next generation problem, which is like you've been to a dev boot camp, can you be hired with the kind of old standards of the software community? And so some people were finding success in that, and some less so. And as they did, that created the next problem, which is like, great, there's a lot of women in tech, and many of them are quite junior, and so that starts to create in the human brain this sense of like, oh, I see a woman in tech, and therefore I assume she is junior because that's mostly what I experience in the workplace. And so, I think that is the problem at which you and I were stepping into that. So how is it now? I think we're still in that. I think we're still in that space as an industry that there are increasingly women in tech, and representation at senior levels is still lagging. And so I think the question we're all asking ourselves is that just time? Will time cure that? Probably not. There's probably a little bit more to do, but so this blend of being patient, but also not leaving it to chance.
Absolutely. And programs like this help that. Have you found any other strategies within your company or your organization that have moved the needle a little bit, even within your team?
That's a good question. So I'm at a larger company now with about 130 employees, mostly technologists, and I've only been there for about 6 months, and so I feel like it's a little bit early to say. And the two jobs previously to that were very small teams that weren't hiring a lot, and so the group of engineers was the group that was there when I got there, and so it was mostly male, and so I don't feel like I have any great stories there on things that I've seen firsthand.
Okay. Cool. So that's the story. When I was looking at your curriculum or your professional timeline, I was interested in wondering. I was wondering who was Jenny like as a younger girl, and then you went into civil engineering and then into software, and those transitions a little bit. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. As a little girl, the thing that sticks out to me, there's two things that stick out to me about my childhood. One is that we traveled a bit. So at two different points in time, we lived in the UK, and I think that it made me open to change. It made me excited about other cultures and other places. And, there's inevitably some social friction that comes along with like, okay, this year I have to make all new friends, and next year I have to do it all again. And so being fairly resilient on those things, I think, that's important. And then the other thing is I had, throughout my growing up, I had a best friend who lived down the street, and, still know her, obviously. And she and I were just really creative players. Like, we played like hardcore. We didn't just play board games, although we did that, but we did a lot of creative play. And I would say kind of like past what other kids were doing it. We were just weird kids who were doing our own play thing for a long time. And I don't know how that, shaped me, but I'm just pretty sure it did somehow.
Nice. Do you incorporate creative play into your girls' life?
I've been surprised as a parent to find how, I had this fantasy that I was going to be really engaged in that as a parent, and I've been surprised how much I've grown out of it. Like, I'm just an adult, and I'm kind of stiff, and it makes me sad, and I'm not super proud of it, but it is what it is. One thing I have done as a parent is try and make sure that there's a lot of unscheduled time and not too many structured activities in
Oh,
there.
that's,
It's weird to say that this year because I think we're all doing that whether we like it or not. But
yeah.
I was, back when there was a life outside the home for kids, I tried to keep it in check a little bit.
I have a theory as a parent that boredom actually instigates
Yes.
creativity. So
I am pro boredom. I am pro go play.
yeah, so anytime I hear any of my girls say I'm bored, I'm like, that's the spot. That's where that's where stuff happens. Because then you're not externally entertained. You have to figure out how to keep yourself entertained with life, kind of like. And so you went through school for mostly civil engineer, and you have a great pedigree, obviously. How did you transition from civil to software?
I got into grad school, I think through the strength of not having the best grades, but showing the upward trend of improving my grades through college. And so there I was, my first couple weeks, I had gotten into and chosen to go to MIT, very technology focused school. And the plan was that I was in the field of transportation. And so the plan was that I would probably be studying something like transportation policy, something that was kind of on the policy side of engineering work. And then I just got to school that first week or two, and it was totally just passion and like impulsiveness of youth. And I was just like, I'm at MIT, I'm going to do computers. And like, I hadn't done much programming in college, almost none. And so, but I found a new advisor that first week, and I changed my curriculum to learn to program was the first thing I needed to do. And then my graduate school curriculum ended up, my master's and PhD ended up being about algorithm design for transportation networks. So that's how I was able to kind of maneuver that change. But so I spent grad school programming, scientific programming, terrible code, like really, really bad. I can't overemphasize how terrible the code was. But so, lots of scientific code.
Was there a moment that you remember specifically? Because I mean, for me and for others, there is that moment where you're like, oh, I see something and I can do it with my own hands, and it's a problem, you can solve it. Was that the thing?
I certainly felt satisfied by like a good day programming that way. When I think of the moment I felt like I could do it, it was taking a course in algorithms and getting a better grade, like, bit by bit, test by test, and eventually the final grade, getting a better grade than people who I thought looked the part. Like we as women have, unfortunately, a lot of the same biases as we're frustrated people have about us. And so I had some of those biases that, some of my peers had been to French universities that are famous for being really good at math. And some of them had been to very, very competitive schools in India, like IIT. And I just thought, these people, these people really deserve to be here and are going to be really good at this. And obviously they deserve to be there. And obviously they were really good at this. And the surprising was like, oh, and I am too.
Or sometimes even better.
Yeah, sometimes even better on a good day.
Yeah.
So that was my aha on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think that's kind of like what keeps me in tech sometimes, is like that feeling of like, oh, wow, I am actually just as good as or even better than other people who have done this for a long time. And so, yeah, I totally can relate with that story. So that was kind of like you're into tech, and then obviously you have a great experience in terms of like being a software developer and then moving into management, and then obviously leading teams at CTOs, and your final, like now being co-CEO at 8th Light. In your professional career, like keeping with the theme of like, how do we keep women in tech, or was there a recipe of success that you have distilled or found, or what are some of the drivers that kept you in tech, even, through having a family and through life changes and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So I don't feel like I have a recipe. Things that I think are great about tech, that I have enjoyed, that I think make it a place of opportunity for everyone. It's a fast-moving field. Things change quickly, and so that makes it ripe for all kinds of disruption, including just charting your own course, including using the chaos to your own professional advantage a little bit.
Yeah.
So just the pace of change and the fact that many technology workplaces, especially startups and others, are a little bit disorganized, and that there's plenty of examples of where that might disadvantage women and other traditionally underrepresented groups. But it's also like with good mentors, with good support, with good sponsors, it also creates pathways, because the field isn't always, it's not always structured, and so there can be room for disruption, even though there's sometimes cultural problems. I've also there's just been a lot of money in this industry, and I think that means that there's a lot of opportunity generally, and that's something that I found both rewarding, and is also the industry is moving. There's a lot of money in it. There's a lot of thirst for talent. So anybody who gets in there and there are opportunities to be recognized for making a contribution, and people want talent at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of the advantages. How you mentioned how using chaos to your own professional advantage. What was that? What was that looking like?
And there's examples of being mentored, sponsored, encouraged, pushed in this too. But I took about 3.5 years out of the workforce, and was a stay-at-home mom during that time. And then when I went back to work, I specifically targeted startups, because I'm kind of an ambitious person, and even though I enjoyed that time at home with my kids, I also had this chip on my shoulder about all the professional growth lost during those 3.5 years. So I wanted to go to a place where there was risk and also reward for a potential for rapid advancement. So I decided to look at startups, and the startup that I joined, I was a little bit older than most people at the company, and I was female, so that that kind of had me stick out a little bit. And I remember when we had these company meetings and people would give presentations, and I remember one of the younger, earlier career women at the company really pushed me to give a presentation, because she thought I knew something, and she wanted this to be the kind of company where there were women in charge. And I had wrinkles or gray hair or something that looked like maybe I could be in charge. So she was kind of pushing me forward, and I remember feeling like I don't know anything, but I don't want to let her down, and so I will give a presentation on something, right? And so that's an example of the little bits of chaos, her pushing me to give a presentation, and then me kind of elbowing my way into the presentation, and then people think I know a thing, and of course it turns out I do know a thing. I just had to be pushed to do it. Yeah, about it. So little things like that, and that's an example of the mentorship that doesn't, and the sponsorship that doesn't always come from above, but it comes from the whole community of people wanting to see better representation.
Yeah, I definitely love the fact that it was a woman who pushed you too, because we obviously hear a lot about male sponsors and male mentors, and because naturally they're the one in charge. But I really am supportive of women pushing women to be greater, do better.
So here's another story. We like most startups, we had a terrible website that we knew we had to make better. And so a colleague of mine that I respected a lot was he was the engineer in charge of the website committee. And I remember him coming out of this committee meeting and saying, okay, we need content, we need people to write blogs, right? And he's and so Jenny, you need to write a blog on Docker. And I remember thinking, like, okay, first off, I barely know what Docker is. This is back in like 2013, 2014. Nobody knew what Docker was. It was like brand new. It's like, I barely know what that is. I don't know anything about it. I can't write a blog about it. And I remember my first impulse was like, this jerk wants to expose my ignorance by making me write this blog post. So that was my first thought, was like fear and anger. And then my second thought was, but I can't let him win. So I write a blog post about Docker that I know nothing about. And so, you know, when I had to sit down to do the work, I was like, okay, well, like, so rationally, if I don't know anything about this, a lot of people don't know anything about this, and I could use that to my advantage. I can write like the beginner's, you know,
the beginner's
thing. And it, you know, this is at Civis Analytics. We're a data science company, and so I just did this like very beginner how to put a little bit of Python into a Docker container. And so, you know, fast forward a few years. First off, I like went on to have a really rewarding professional relationship with that colleague, and I quickly came to the conclusion that he was not, in fact, out to destroy me.
Nice.
And another thing was that blog post for years and years and years was like the most popular thing on that website for years, just because it had the search terms Python and Docker for like 2013, 2014, 2015. It turns out that was enough to get a lot of traffic to our website.
That's awesome. That's a really good story.
Pushed.
Oh, that's so good. What type of mindset does it take to like take something like that and turn it into an opportunity? Or like, do you see, let me change that a little bit and say like, that's definitely a characteristic that I think makes win versus kind of lose. And I don't want to be binomial about this, but definitely like creates opportunities versus gives up opportunities. I was wondering if you have noticed any other traits within your team that makes, you know, in a successful player, a player that actually gets promoted and moves into better opportunities and greater things. And what are some of those characteristics that you see as now a leader in your organization?
Yeah. I think being change-oriented helps a lot on a management journey, especially an accelerated one. And I think part of that is, you know, people who are change-oriented are perhaps more likely to not know how to do a new thing and then just go do it anyway. And so there's a certain amount of that. And whether it's management or leadership, the skills and the job changes quite a bit as, you know, at different levels. So to be a hands-on manager, a tech lead, is quite different than to be a team of teams manager, is quite different than being, you know, a co-CEO. And so I think just that, like embracing the change, not getting stuck in the things you miss, but being excited about what's ahead. And also having that sense, that ability to question why things that were working before aren't working so well anymore, and what is the new thing that you have to be able to do in the new role or in the new company or in the new, you know, even within the same company, maybe a product is very successful and everybody's job changes because now it's a very different company.
Totally. And that definitely has been a theme in the last year and a half, year and a half, especially with COVID and companies having to change. Is there anything, so you said your team right now is about 130 employees. Do you know the percent, the split between female and male in the tech roles?
Yeah, I think I want to say about 35% female.
And do you have any like mentorship relationship right now with some women in your company?
I do. You know, the truth is like not as much as I'd like. You know, I think it's probably a combination of, well, I have to make decisions that some people like and some people don't, and so that puts up walls. In some cases, people probably think they are not a good use of my time. That is wrong.
That's awesome. I hope people at your company hear this and they're like, right now.
And you know, they're just busy, so that's cool too. But yeah, so I would like to be doing more of that. And I think it's also just, I started this job in the early fall of COVID. And so just the normal things of walking the floor of the office that a new CEO would do to be human, I can't do. And so I have to think of all these Zoom ways to try and do the same things. And they're just not perfect substitutes. And we're in a few different locations. So as soon as I can, I would like to just get on a plane and go see folks in London or Austin, Texas, or New York.
Nice. What are some of the Zoom things you're doing that you found maybe more like that you have tried, whether you failed or success, that you've tried that try to like reach to people?
Yeah, we just tried to do things at all scales. So, we have a standing company meeting. So, I sometimes have segments or announcements in that meeting. That's kind of the biggest scale. Then myself and my co-CEO, Paul, we tried to do fireside chats where we get like a small group of people, and it's just a very different dynamic. People are more likely to ask a question there. And part of why we're doing that too is just with two CEOs, I think there's a logical question that if I ask one CEO one thing, will I get a different answer? And so watching the two of us interact and watching the way that we, act in unison or have a different opinion, just doing that to try and build people's understanding of where we both are. And then, of course, we do, like, I've done one-on-ones, and at this point I have met, I think by the end of the week, I think I will have met everybody at the company.
Oh, nice. Great accomplishment. What is a CoCEO, by the way? Because I have no idea. I don't know what that is. And what is the reasoning behind the CoCEO structure of a company?
Yeah. A co-CEO is just having two people that have that same level of decision authority as a CEO would. And I think that I think it's something that was almost a little in fashion a couple years ago, maybe has fallen out of fashion. I think there's some great examples of where there have been co-CEOs in larger companies, and now, of course, I'm just like blanking on what they are. Probably a more typical arrangement is when you have a true CEO and a very powerful and influential number two. Often they're a COO, Chief Operating Officer, and a CEO is just a more balanced version of that. So however a company is doing it, they have to figure out how they share the job. And so for Paul and myself, we have, some of the executives report to me, and I am the authority on some business functions, and others report to him. And then we both report to a board. So for major stuff, we tend to run it by each other, even though, we know where our lanes are, because, it's just a good practice. Yeah, so that's what we're doing CoCEO wise. Oh, and I think I didn't answer. And why to do it? I think there's a lot of reasons why. It's a way to bring in new perspective without the disruption of, totally having the old perspective depart. And it's a way of giving that new perspective, in my case, as much power and influence as possible, not just on the executive team, but at a higher level. So I think those are some of the reasons to do it. I think there's also some reasons for the CEOs that are good reasons. I feel less lonely at the top than I think is typical for CEOs, and that's a really good feeling that I think will keep me in the job for a long time. That feels good. So yeah, and because sometimes that ultimate authority does come with a certain amount of at a cost. Yeah.
Is this like I don't want to say like an in-training type of role, but could it be an in-training into stepping into your solo CEO role?
Yeah, so I think it could certainly work that way in a lot of situations. And
is that where Jenny potentially will be one day? Not at 8 Light specifically or anything else, but like, are you gunning towards a tech CEO role at some point?
I don't know. I don't know. I think when Paul and I were talking about this, I was worried that knowing myself, I would very quickly start to crave, like the CEO. And so I've been really surprised at myself a little bit in the past like 6 months, how that hasn't really crept into my thinking. And I feel like the benefits of having a peer to be stronger with far outweigh that ego, and I just don't find, and to my own surprise, I don't find my mind going there.
I wonder if you guys are onto something, having a male, now I have no idea, I don't know who Paul is, I don't know him specifically, but having a male CEO and a co-female CEO, maybe there's a lot of complementary things happening there that may really propel a new type of arrangement, kind of like the current presidential male president and female VP president. I'm looking forward to seeing if some of these things are more symbiotic than just, a completely male structure or something like that.
Yeah, I wonder too. But yeah, there's something else to
say. Awesome. So, how does a woman that is currently in tech, and it's at that point where she is ready to level up, whether it's taking a VP role or a more executive role, and I don't know if this is too general, but like, I'm going to ask it anyways, is like, do you have any recommendation for this woman, whether it's within your company or in tech in general, to like level up and step up into those leadership roles? If you have even any advice on how does she find a executive role, maybe at a startup like you did, or a board role at a company like you were on a board before?
Yeah. So, one bit of advice is like, so in some situations you're promoted into you're promoted into an opportunity, and I was that, like, when I first joined that startup, I joined as a software engineer and then was promoted into a tech lead and then a director of engineering position. And one of my learnings for that is I think I was very surprised by it. Maybe in large companies there's less surprise, and there's more slow wheels of progress that are predictable. But either way, I would encourage anybody to be kind of prepared. Like, what if I went into work today and somebody wanted to offer me more money, more responsibility, more opportunity? And I think anybody who's thoughtful will be cautious about that. But in that moment, there's value to like already negotiating and what's right. And it's really asymmetric. If somebody draws you into a conference room and says, we'd like to give you more responsibility, and you aren't expecting that, it's very easy to be the deer in the headlights. And they came prepared to the conversation and you didn't, right? So the only thing to do is to kind of be constantly prepared for that conversation. Like, what if somebody offered me more responsibility and more opportunity today?
Nice.
What would I do? And I think there's a lot of things to do. There's okay, so it's game on for the negotiation. What do I want to be successful? And that's not just compensation. That's like, what's the scorecard? You're asking me to take on more responsibility. Do you know what success actually looks like? And can you tell me that today? And if you can't tell me that today, can you go home and do your homework, or can we have that as a dialogue, or whatever the setup is? So yeah, that's some piece of advice is just to be ready for that, as if it could happen at any moment, and also just be to be able to be as confident as you can be in that moment. Like, it's hard to go around and tell people just be confident, right? Or just seem confident. That's like hard advice to follow, right? But maybe playing that out in your head is a way to give off that vibe. And the truth is that whoever's brought you into that conference room chose you, right? For a good reason.
Totally. No, totally. I love that advice. I never thought about it that way. It's like being ready for that to happen at any moment. I definitely can say I'm not necessarily ready for that right now, so I'm going to go home and think about this for a second.
I didn't speak to how do you create that moment for yourself, which is another good conversation. And there, I don't feel like I have, this is just my own lived experience. I haven't reflected on that a lot. I guess I have, but in job search times, when it comes to job searches, I've tried to, in my better moments, look before I leap and think about what I want and why I want it. And so if it was really important to me that the next job title be Chief Technology Officer, then have that as part of the conversation with the CEO who's hiring for technology leadership. So I guess that's the way in which I've ensured those, or tried to ensure those opportunities for myself, less through promotion and more through job searches.
Yeah, it totally sounds like, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, what you're saying, it sounds like you're not afraid to ask for what you want.
Yeah, I think that's true. Not afraid to ask. And I think perhaps there's also a slow game for just, in the podcast world, we often hear the advice that great leaders are humble, and it's true. And most of us like that. That is good advice, generally speaking. And then, flipping that around a little bit, in all this, reputation of humility that a leader might be trying to create about themselves, are they accidentally creating the sense that they don't want opportunities, that they are afraid of it, that they will shrink back from it, I think I've also tried in my professional life to make sure that people around me know that I am ambitious, that I am kind of low grade unsatisfied, not in a bad way, not in a toxic way, just in an ambitious way. And, as somebody who is at the top of the food chain, I'm always excited to see that in people. Low grade, a little unsatisfied is kind of great, right? It's not, it's not grumpy. It's just, it's like that person is ambitious, and that's kind of great to see.
Yeah, I really like that, because there is that sense that we should wait sometimes to get it, or if we ask, we may be too forceful. So yeah. I like that wording that you said, low grade unsatisfied. In practice, having a conversation, what does low grade unsatisfied sound like?
I remember, so at Civis, for example, I was a director of engineering for a while, and I think I would just, in talking to the top two executives of the company, just construct sentences about my eventual promotion to vice president of engineering. And it wasn't like, this has to happen this week. I just want you to know that is my goal. And I want you to know that I am working towards that. So if there is something I need to do to make that come true, it would help if you told me what that is. And I also want you to feel the pressure of that clock. That is something I'm looking for. And so I will stay, I will be productive, I will put into this company as long as that is a credible opportunity for me. Treat me like your future VP of engineering. How would I change my behavior if that's my future, my vision of myself? And how would you treat me if you knew that was what my ambition was?
That's really awesome. And I the first question that comes to mind is where did you learn that? What was it that made you do that?
I don't know.
That's a great answer. I think it's really awesome. I don't think as women, generally, we ask enough for what we want in a healthy way. So I think that is definitely a great key to asking for things in a healthy way. I'm not saying right now, I'm just saying this is my goal. let's both work towards this. I'll help you and you will help me, and we will make this company great in the meantime together, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And there's nothing wrong with asking, and a form of asking that I have found useful is not just literally asking, can I have this promotion? Can I have this pay increase? But it's painting painting my self-image that I am a person who wants those things, right? Mm-hmm. Like telling people, expressing desire, expressing ambition, and making sure people see me that way.
I love it. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think that's one of the clearest answers I've got about getting there and asking for things. So I'm super excited to get this online, actually. Awesome. We have a few minutes left. So we're gonna just change a little bit and then kind of like turn into the the questions that are going to be the end of the interview. But any hobbies you picked up during COVID that you want to share?
Yeah, I do the sourdough bread thing. I really enjoyed that. I'm pretty proud of my weekly loaves of bread these days. I've been a gardener for the past couple years, and so that's been a nice thing about being at home is I can do even more of that and not let things die.
Do you see yourself do you see your company at least changing the way their relationship with remote workers at all?
Yeah, and we certainly don't have all the answers yet. It seems so. We had a few remote folks, and before COVID, it was edge cases. It was people who changed their life or extremely valuable hires. I think it'll be more of the norm of at A-Flight, but I'm not sure that it will be the only thing. And I think that we will probably bring back offices in some way, and I just don't know how. But it seems like we're not ready to say 100% remote. There's still a lot that people miss about office culture, but
I guess hybrid probably is the way I see it going as well.
Yeah, I think that's where we'll be.
Providing options for people to do their best work. I mean, I find as a technical person or as a manager of engineers or manager of managers that people sometimes need to be home in order to have deep work, just because of office can be distracting at times. Mm-hmm. And so we've had a lot of increase in productivity. Have you noticed similarities in that in your experience?
I just don't know. I think what's as a consultancy, what has been hard for us. Everybody, I was at a product company at the beginning of COVID, and the compare and contrast I see is that at a product company, it was a startup. We were still trying to survive, just like we were before the pandemic, and we're still trying to get this product out there and be successful, just like we were trying to do. So the community around the shared goal was still there, even though the way we engage with each other on the shared goal is now Zoom. So that felt less disruptive. At a consultancy, so much of our time is focused on our clients and our customers. So I was not full-time at A-Flight before the pandemic hit. So I can only this is what I've heard, not what I've experienced. But we came in office together on Fridays for that shared community time. And I think that was really important for us to feel like this is the time at which I'm with other A-Flight people really focused on community inside A-Flight, not just my professional relationships with my client. And so that's been disruptive to us to try and figure out how do we create that time for A-Flight community in this remote way.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys come up to. Maybe it's a trip to Hawaii, or I'm advocating for the employees at A-Flight right now. That's awesome. Any other differences that you've experienced between the product companies that you've worked at and now the consultancy side?
Yeah, I think generally in my career, when I hiring is a big part of any VP of engineering, CTO, CEO role at a tech company. The pursuit of talent is always a big thing, and I think a general maturation of mine is I no longer try and harass everybody that I know that I think is great to come work where I'm working currently or now. Instead, I think, I try and think deeply about what, like, of all the people I know, who would really thrive here and love it. And, be honest with myself about this isn't actually a great fit for every awesome technologist I know, only some of them. And so I've been thinking, especially as somebody who's been at product companies, what is great about product company jobs? And I said some of those things, this like shared sense of mission to, for the product that you're working on can be really compelling and fun. And what is the answer for a consultancy? Like, what's awesome about working at a consultancy and for whom? And I think, I noticed that consultants, one thing that really hit me when I started doing one-on-ones at 8th Light is very strong communicators. I would say that the average communicators at 8th Light would be in the top decile at other places I worked in terms of engineering communication. And that really, so people who are great communicators thrive at consultancies, or consultancies are particularly good at training those skills, probably a little bit of both. That's one thing. Another thing is, I think it's a good fit for people who want to change technology projects with some frequency. So, as an engineering manager at a product company, I always tried to accommodate team changes as much or whenever I could. But the truth is, there's a lot of people who've been chained to that particular stack for 5 years and can't find a way out, right? And whereas at a consultancy, it's like consultants might change projects 6 months, 12 months, sometimes longer depending on their preferences, but more frequently. And so that for some people that's just enjoyable, and it creates this other skill, which is how do you go into a foreign code base and become productive, like assess it quickly and become productive quickly. And that's a pretty cool engineering skill to have.
Yeah, in addition to the diversity of just seeing how different companies operate within a specific solution.
That's right. Exactly. You see a bunch of different patterns across companies, cultural patterns, process patterns, technical patterns. And then, the third thing I see in awesome consultants is I think consultancies are great places for people who really value building things the right way. And product organizations, I think there's a wide range. Sometimes there's just this got to get out the door. There's a wider variety of commitments to quality engineering. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, a lot of times that the pursuit of quality is the quality of the user experience. And the quality of the code matters a lot, but it matters in this long-term way. It's like, how can we deliver that awesome user experience no matter how many changes we make to the product, no matter how long it lives? Whereas, in a software consultancy, the quality of the code base is why people are bringing us in, and we're always building for the quality and the maintainability and the future of that code.
Yeah, as technologists, we know that there's nothing worse than receiving bad code from another person and then having to maintain it.
That's right. We don't want the 8th Light brand name on that bad quality code, so we just don't do that. So for people who are like minded towards engineering build quality, it's like it can be really satisfying.
Yeah, I really love that 8th Light is thinking about that from a long-term perspective, and I am sure it'll impact your long-term relationship with your customers as well. So great job.
Yeah, we think so. We see it in our Net Promoter scores. So yes, it does.
Nice, perfect. All right, last few questions. What is a book that you have gifted the most, or you have given your teams?
That's a good
it
one.
Could be a book, it could be an article, it could be a podcast, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. It's been a few years since it came out, but I think for early career engineers, there's a book called The Effective Engineer, and it's basically just about engineering work habits and how to be a productive engineer on a lot of different ways, like, finger habits and tooling, and also working on the right things, and, figuring out where you fit in the organization's priorities. I don't always love the writing voice of the author, but the actual material that's in it, I think, is really smart. So that's something that that I've encouraged early career engineers to have book clubs around, particularly.
Nice.
Great first job book. Farther along, I love Camille Fournier's Manager's Path. A lot of people love that book, frequently recommended. I'm trying to think of what is a little bit less.
Anything recent that you have enjoyed?
Yeah, I like the Horowitz one on culture. You have to put in the show notes what the name of the book is, but I enjoyed that one. That really stuck with me. He has a couple of great books. Yeah, there's one that's very much about kind of brutal startup culture called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. That one I enjoyed too, and is good if you're on a startup leadership team. But I think the audience for the one about company culture, about organizational culture, and I don't remember.
I'll find it.
Yeah, is the audience for that one is wide, and I just found it very it kind of stuck with me, and I found myself for weeks thinking about, is the thing I'm doing at work today, is that reflecting what I learned through that book?
Nice. I love that. What is a book that you would write?
Book I would write?
If you had to write one.
Yeah, years and years and years ago, I read some little article about somebody whose mom was an engineer by training, and the way she ran the house is that if something was consistently failing, like the socks never go in the basket, she would just come to the conclusion that the problem was the system, that the system was somehow poorly designed for its goal, and so she would just try and ensure that all the systems of the household were had the right incentive properties, considered the right factors, etc. And that always just made me chuckle that that's what it's like to have especially an engineering manager as a mom, to the entire the family's engineering managed, the family vacations, the sock bin, it's all and so I don't know what it would be, but it would be something like that. It would be like how I'm kind of the same whether I'm going to the parent-teacher meeting or planning the family vacation. It would be something about that.
We definitely have retros in my house. So it's like, what went wrong in this situation? Let's read this.
Right.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, great. And then the last question is, what does it mean to be unbossed to you? The podcast is called Unbossed. It's just a little fun question that I asked, and I wonder if you had any thoughts about that.
What does it mean to be unbossed? I think it means having, your own compass about achievement and progress and change in life. And to me, it means that, career paths and professional performance management, those things have a place in our, they serve an important function in our professional careers. But they shouldn't be how we measure our life, right? Including really our professional life. We should take stock and say, what things in my work week energize me, what does not? Why am I different? How am I different than I was 10 years ago? And what does that mean for the next 10 years? Etc. So I think it's charting your own path personally and professionally. And not having that be defined by a boss, whether that boss is a person or structure or a culture.
Absolutely. And I think you've shown that in your professional and personal career. So thank you so much for being
making it up as I go along.
Thank you so much for being here. We're a little bit over, so I'm gonna let you go. Yes.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Okay. Bye.